Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Something to Drink On. My name is No Crook, and I am here with my friend Michael. He is a musician, a producer, a man of God, and we're going to have some very interesting conversations if you've been listening so far. Today we're going to be drinking some French press coffee with a little bit of cream. I added honey because I'm weak. Uh, but Michael, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell the people what you're about.
Yeah, so I'm Michael Slonim. I live here in Anderson, Indiana for the next few days. Moving to Indianapolis soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Josh said, I'm a record producer and drummer. I've got a indie pop band called Four Story, and we're based out of Indianapolis. So do a lot of music stuff. I do some. I do all the production for that group, and I do some production for outside clients a little bit as well. And yeah, that's me. I'm married to a beautiful woman, Katie, and went to AU with Josh, and that's how we know each other.
Yeah. So how old are you right now?
23.
23. All right. So I got 2 years on you. That's good. So when did you get married?
2016.
So
June 18th.
So you were 20. 21.
Yeah, it was right before I turned 20, like the week before I turned 20.
Man.
Birthday's June 27th.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
See, I see people getting married that young, and I'm like, no, run away, because I'm always terrified of those ending badly. I've
gotten that reaction a lot. Like, why?
Yeah, no. Well, and there's the idea of like, why do you want to settle so early? It's not that. That's not my thing. My thing is like I've known so many people who were just young and in love, and it wasn't sustainable.
Sure.
Which
that happened a lot at AU.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to hint at without being too blunt.
Oh, am I being too on the nose there?
No, you're fine. We can be as on the nose as we want about that place. We paid enough to go there. We can do what we want at this point.
Well, I definitely saw some people like get married and then get divorced before graduation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that did happen to a few people, didn't it?
Like multiple.
I forgot about that. I legitimately forgot about that. So,
which, like, nothing against those people at all. Like, I'm sure, like, you know, that was just really hard, and they had to do.
They're horrible sinners because they got a divorce. What are you talking about?
Like, yeah, I don't want to like make light of what they've gone through, but I think, like, I don't know if it was something, you know, about like the culture or just like.
No, it definitely was.
Yeah.
They had a weird culture of dating and relationships at AU. It was really
True.
bad. No, it was weird because, yeah, like I knew a lot of girls who were there who had been engaged and then were single, and who had gotten married, and now it's like, oh, they're not working out. Or like this one girl I was dating, she had been married for like 6 years.
6 years? Yeah, was she a student?
No, not at AU, just in general. Just
gotcha.
like I was dating her recently, and she was married for like 6 years, and just finally found the reason to leave. Let me put it that way.
Sure.
So it's like, and she realized now, like, yeah, I was too young. Like, I got married at 18, and I kind of regret that sometimes. But you know, I have a son who I adore, so that helps. And I was like, oh yeah. Which, you know, me and you were talking about dating, and I think that's the funniest reality that I exist in right now is. My dating pool is predominantly moms or divorcees.
Interesting.
Because that's the thing. Since so many people did get married young, normally,
right?
they either are still in a relationship or they're not.
Well, plus you're super old. You're like 25.
Whole 25.
You know, yeah, everyone's a mom at that age.
Pretty much. It's weird. No, it's super weird. It's funny though because like I've gotten a view on like what I want the mother of my children to look like because of how I've seen good and bad mothers. Like just different.
It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, like this one girl. She's like, yeah, no, you're not gonna meet my kid for like 4 months if this ends up being a thing. I was like, okay. Yeah, no, that means you want to protect your kid. That's totally viable. Like, why would I be upset about that? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably really good.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but our situation was so I didn't meet Katie through college. I met her knew her my whole life pretty much. We dated long distance for many years, and then it was just kind of time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's weird. Like, I don't know much about the dating culture at AU because I was never...
You were never a part of it.
A part of it, yeah. Even though I got married super young, like a lot of other AU people did. I got married young for different reasons, I guess.
Better reasons, I would argue.
Hopefully.
Well, you...
Not that if you went to AU and you got married young, that's bad.
There were some bad reasons. When you go to a Christian college, when part of your reason for going is to find your person.
The MRS degree.
Christian college. Oh, absolutely. A lot of people went for the MRS degree. Guy and girl, I would argue.
Yeah.
When you go there looking for that and you get it, and then you realize, I don't know what to do with this degree when I get out of college. Like the rest of us.
I think maybe, if you go with the intention to find a spouse, if you get, you get a couple years in and you're like, crap, I haven't found the one yet.
Yeah.
That God has for me.
Right. Oh, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, then that it probably does put some pressure on to like, we got to get a move on with this marriage thing.
Well, see, and it's funny. You actually brought up for me, I think what was the most toxic part about AU's dating is finding God's choice for you.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is like a big source outside of college more that I'm thinking about it. Even when I was in college, I was like, this is kind of a manipulative thing to use.
Yeah, and I think,
or like a way like for because it comes from youth group, it comes from youth ministry. This idea of like save yourself for the one that God wants for you, because we don't know how to talk about sexuality in the church, so that's our way of dealing with it, and we put some big purpose behind it. And then you go to a Christian college and you have this idea of, this is supposed to be the perfect person for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know what the perfect person for you is because you haven't dated. Because...
Right, but I think like you're waiting for, I think it's I don't know, this gets very deep and into stuff I'm not really qualified to talk about, but
that's what this entire podcast is.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'll fit right in. Strong opinions about things that I have absolutely no qualifications for. Perfect.
That's life, isn't it?
Yes. I think believers are wanting to, continually determine what God's will is, which is good. Like, that should be something that we're after. But I think there's a misinterpretation of what it means to determine God's will. And I think...
Okay.
I think that God's will for us has largely been made known through Scripture, and to sort of ignore wisdom because you have a feeling that you feel like might be from God, or someone told you is from God because they want you to
think that
sound spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
I think if something that you are hearing, quote unquote, from the Lord,
from God,
contradicts, if it contradicts Scripture, in my mind, it's not from God. Yeah. And if it contradicts, like, common sense, you also probably want to, not that God doesn't ever contradict common sense, he actually does, but maybe, like, test that really carefully rather than just being like, I have a feeling. And I don't think, I'm very much of the philosophy that, like, there is no, like, we don't have soulmates. Like, there's not a specific person that God has for me. It's like, it's any other, I mean, there is now because I'm married, but
well, no, but even then, you realize that wasn't something like God ordained at the beginning, like, this is the person you shall be with, so it is said,
Right. Well, no more than any other, no more than the fact that, like, we're sitting in this house having this conversation is like,
exactly.
like I live in this house because it was cheap and I needed a place to live.
Right.
not because God put a star over the roof of it and said,
that's where you're going.
Come here. And I don't know why we treat, I guess just because it seems like a big decision, and it is. It's a life-changing one, more than where you live or, what your job is or whatever. It's like probably one of the most important decisions you'll ever make, definitely.
Yeah.
But just because it's a big decision doesn't mean God's just going to give you the answer any more than he does with any other decision. And it's not like he's been like saving this perfect woman or man for you for your whole life and is just like waiting to give them to you in all of this. You know what I mean?
No, I completely agree. The thing is, I think you hit on something that you didn't even mean to, and I think it's just this over-spiritualization of how Christians perceive reality. Because, like, even you saying, like, oh, I have this house. I see so many people like, oh, God bless me with the house. I'm like, okay, kind of. And sometimes, sometimes that goes more than just the being grateful and being, like, showing that gratitude and, like, appreciation for what you have. Which, I mean, that's scriptural, I think.
Sure.
But I think there's this other side that people just over-spiritualize. They're like, oh, I got this job, or, oh, I got coffee with this friend. Like, it literally goes down to certain levels that you're just like, come on. You just want a social media post.
But
get off of yourself.
But I wonder if part of that you mentioned like over spiritualizing reality.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's happening because actually we're under spiritualizing reality. So hear me out. So
okay, let me hear your contrast.
If I'm perceiving everything as a gift from God, and that's like a given. Like, yes, this house is a gift from God because God made the heavens and the earth and everything in them.
Right. And creation in general.
Right, and if everybody is constantly perceiving the world that we live in as a gift and everything in it as a gift, then
why do we need to be obnoxious about it?
Well, but like this house specifically isn't any more of a gift than like
the land that
the tree across the street or the road that
you have.
Right.
And
it's not like God ordained in that he was like bing bing bing, this is the house for you, but it's like this is like the world that he put me in, and this is what he's blessed us all with, and I feel like having continual appreciation for everything as a gift from God,
oh my gosh,
is a way, like, you can worship through that without misinterpreting God's will, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. Well, okay, so you sound like me right now, which is great. I'm glad to hear these things. These are positive theology points, I think.
You sound surprised.
No.
We've had some fun debates in the past. Yeah,
we've had some disagreements, which is why I'm like, okay, I'm glad you're finding some really solid things to stand on. because you come into AU as a Christian, and you don't have a leg to stand on. 9 times out of 10, people I've talked to on campus, when they come in, they have totally different theology than when they leave. And that's either because they've given up on it, because they've wrestled with it and actually took Bible 101 for what it was supposed to be, or which you struggled with, I remember, which was kind of funny. And now to hear you coming out and being like, I think the way we spiritualize.
I'm still not advocating for Bible 101.
I agree. I don't think it should be a general studies unless you want to take it. I think if it's a college, you don't have to do that, but I get why they do it. Because a lot of Christians there who don't want to actually invest in their faith. And do we really want more ignorant Christians in our society today? Yeah. Like, we already have a list.
I don't know if Bible what is it, Bible 1000 or
Intro to Bible, whatever it was.
Yeah, Intro to Bible.
Yeah.
So we don't do the whole 101 thing. But I don't know if I don't know if biblical studies is helping create more educated Christians.
Well, here's the thing. The point that you just got to, I came to through biblical studies. And here's my path.
Okay.
So for me, I see the Old Testament as a very big draw for that point of theology you just said. I think in the Old Testament, you have people creating altars as they go, as they travel, and blessing places as places of worship. I see them recognizing God in the Sabbath and in these offerings and in these rituals they did.
Sure.
Now, some of it was cult-like, because every religion is cult-like in some sense. It is. I mean, we have those things. We sing worship songs every Sunday, even though we don't like some of those worship songs. You know, we have these
It's
things.
a cult.
It's a cult.
Get out.
Well, I mean, so I've been listening to a lot of Joe Rogan recently, which I've actually found more enjoyable than I thought I would originally. He kind of has that stance, like every religion's a cult, and I'm like, okay, I kind of get what you're saying. Like I get.
Who's Joe Rogan?
He was in MMA, and then he was a commentator, and now he's like a comedian. He just kind of does whatever. He has a lot of very interesting people. He has Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's had Ben Shapiro. He's had like everybody all over the spectrum. He's pretty cool. I definitely recommend his podcast.
Cool.
Again, I sound like I have a sponsorship every time I do a podcast because there's something that I mentioned that I just kind of push to my audience.
Yeah.
Speaking of,
we interrupt this to bring you this important message about.
God, I wish I had a
toilet paper.
A toilet paper?
Yeah.
I wish I had a toilet paper.
Toilet paper endorsement.
Oh, any type of endorsement would be great.
I think I've been listening to Pat McAfee's podcast, and
oh god, he has a podcast.
So yeah,
I want to check that out now.
It's
he seems
fun.
like such a cool dude.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
For those of you who may not know, Pat McAfee is probably one of the nicest players on the Colts, the Indianapolis Colts football team.
Definitely one of the most outspoken and interesting. Yeah, he's fun to listen to.
I remember hearing stories of Colts camp where he would like sit for 45 minutes to an hour signing things for people just so they would have a signature.
Yep. Because
a lot of the other players wouldn't sit and sign things.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Which makes me just like admire the hell out of somebody for being that not necessarily even humble, but just like being that generous with their time.
I think a lot of he lives a lot of his life like just to like help people have a good time,
which is wonderful.
Yeah, it's great. But anyway, some of the endorsements he has on his. Oh no, it wasn't him. Well, him and some of his endorsements are funny. Like he's got this his sponsorship from this company called Liquid Death, which is a
hot sauce.
It's water.
Really?
But in a can that looks like a beer can, and it says funny. Liquid Death on the outside.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's super cool. But yeah, he's always like he videos it sometimes. He always he's drinking it on his show and stuff. And I thought it was beer, but it's not. Yeah. So yeah, you need to find some like fun products.
I need to find fun people to endorse me. That'd be great.
Right. Plus, there's always the like.
I could always try AU. They would love having my podcast with me talking all kinds of shit. So actually, it's funny. I had a friend of mine recently post on Facebook, "Fuck AU." That's literally all he put.
Wow.
Which I mean, so he has had something happen recently that was really stupid and really, really poorly addressed. If there was actually an issue, so he was going to work out at the gym and like play basketball there, just because I mean he's not a student anymore, but they would just let him in. They had his picture at the front desk and to call AUPD if he showed up.
Okay.
Because apparently he was starting fights, which was completely untrue. But that was in the report that the AUPD had. Nice. Yeah. Okay. So I thought it was because of that, or if there was something else that happened. So I messaged him. I was like, "What's up?" He was like, "Well, I'm just saying how I feel." All right. That's how people feel after going to AU. Fair enough. Like it's really, it bothers me that this has always been my beef with AU because they have a lot of integrity issues with how they address students, I think. Especially with where the students are on the social hierarchy, which they claim not to have. Football players, people who are really popular on campus, people who are in certain social clubs who can get away with things. Not saying names, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, like, just stuff like that everybody knew was going on, but they didn't address well. And I think
it's weird
that was always an issue.
It's such a small campus. And
it is. You think there would be more integrity there, wouldn't you?
Well, I wonder if the size of the campus like correlates with the at least perceived lack of integrity, because like everybody, because it's so small, everybody sort of knows what's
shit.
going on. Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
It's like a small town in the midst of a campus.
Right. Yeah, like if there's a crazy party, off campus somewhere, like
somebody will find out.
People know about it, or if like there's just like gossip spreads very quickly, and I know like there's been times when people have been banned from chapel or whatever, or playing in chapel things. Or for gossip basically.
Yeah.
But not if like I think stuff just like spreads very quickly. It's a really interesting dynamic. I think though, like a lot of people, it's easy after college when you're still sort of trying to figure out what you want to do or like why you aren't doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
You get very disillusioned and you sort of wake up to reality and you're like, oh shit, I'm an adult now, like what?
Yeah.
Now and I think it's easy to, when you went to a school that is such an easy target because it's so weird in so many ways, it's very easy to
put it off on that.
Yeah, to be like, oh, I have something to blame now. And I do think that there's some real negatives.
Yeah.
But I think like early on, I probably fell into that some of like I was very much sort of like looking for something to blame. Now things are, I don't know, I feel like I'm in a better place than I was when I graduated, emotionally, spiritually, and even like in my career and stuff, and so I feel I'm able to focus on the positive more, be more grateful for what I did get out of that school, I guess. It goes up and down depending on the day.
Yeah.
For sure.
No, I get that.
But it's easy to be like, man, I'm not where I want to be. Let's like, who can I put this on?
Who can I put down to make myself feel better?
Yeah. Sure.
I think that's definitely a piece of it. I mean, for me, I was like that even as a junior or senior at AU. I was like, there's a lot of stupid stuff going on here. Why is there a lot of stupid stuff going on here? This place should be better.
Right.
Because it feels like it's better sometimes, and then it doesn't. It's weird. It's just a weird dynamic, and it's a weird culture on campus as well. Because it's not at all what's outside. And like you said, once you graduate, you're just kind of like, well, what now? And I think part of it is a lot of the rules, a lot of the restrictions, and a lot of the inconsistencies with those rules and restrictions that bothers me the most. So, for me, it's administration that I have an issue with. Almost 90% of everything else on campus I'm okay with, except for their food service, which switched my sophomore year.
Chartwell's. That's what your sophomore year?
It was. Because my freshman
year...
What
year did you graduate?
I graduated in 2016. Because
they switched to I thought they switched to Chartwell's when I was there.
It was sophomore. Because my freshman year, they had a totally different service. We had like a grill and everything downstairs, like all kinds of different food you could get.
Hey, dude, you should be sponsored by Chartwell's.
No, because they would. You
can get free. You can get free boiled chicken.
Poorly seasoned boiled chicken. Yay.
It was seasoned?
No, it wasn't. That's my point. I don't know, maybe I had some salt. Or maybe that's just me remembering a lot of salt towards the boiled chicken.
Trying to remember... They had... There's a couple of meals that I can remember that I liked there.
I don't remember anything.
They had wings one time. That was pretty cool.
I want you to repeat what you just said and realize how silly that sounds in retrospect. They had wings one time. They had wings one time. That's the credit I'm giving them.
They had gyros one time.
Okay, now the gyros were decent.
The gyros were...
Those were okay.
Those were like some good, like, mid-tier level
But when you could just go down the road and get a Euro at King Euros anytime you want, and they taste
for half the price.
Yeah, literally.
Because it's
literally fucking half the price.
It's $12 a meal. Oh man, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there were just certain things about campus that you look back, you're like, wow, that was dumb.
Yeah.
Like, why does this feel like it was? But
I've never had King Euros. Is it good?
It's delicious.
Really?
They have all kinds of crazy food there.
Is that like a chain or is it just an Anderson
Yes. Thing? I don't know how widespread it is though. I know it's an Anderson.
It's been there like my whole life, and I've
never been there.
Been there. I don't know why.
Dude,
I think it scares me a little bit. I'm like, do I
lunch.
really want to get?
Let's do lunch after this. Let's go get it.
Oh, like today?
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. What are you doing with your Wednesday anyway?
It's Wednesday?
Right. Well, today's my Sunday because I start back my I
don't know. I'm a musician. I just slept through the first half of the week, so I'm just kidding.
Minor details. Yeah, because you, getting back on your career, you had Battle of the Bands recently, right? That was last week?
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about that. What's the actual setup for Battle of the Bands?
Yeah, so it's Indianapolis based. The Hi-Fi and a company called MOKB Presents, which runs the Hi-Fi. They're kind of the same thing. Mm-hmm. They are putting it on. It used to be a big deal back in like the early 2000s, and they are revitalizing it this year.
Awesome.
So super stoked to be part of the first year back. There's 72 bands in the competition, and there's 3 rounds. So we just did the first round, and then so first 2 rounds are at the Hi-Fi in Fountain Square. Last round is at the Vogue in Broad Ripple. And the grand prize is $10,000 and a tour van. And a recording package and vinyl pressing and basically, like...
You're set.
Yeah, you're set. Like, you win the competition, like, you have the things that a band
You have
needs.
a record deal for yourself.
Yeah, basically.
And the possible tour setup.
Right.
You just have to book at that point, you just have to book the venues.
And there's also, like, it's pretty cool. Like, some of the judges that they have for it are, like, they've had people from, like, Paradigm judging it, which is a, huge talent agency, and they've had, like, so, yeah, it's a great opportunity for, like, some real exposure to some people that matter, not to mention, like, the grand prize would be pretty sick. Mm-hmm. So... yeah, so last week was the first round for us. I mean, there's multiple first round dates, but that was our first round date. So it was us competing against 5 other bands, and it was awesome. Like, our fans really showed up. Like, whenever we play at the Hi-Fi, like, they show up. And
so you guys actually have a pretty decent following.
It's not bad. Yeah, I mean, for having only been together for a year, like, it's pretty cool. Like, we're still at that stage where every time we play a show, it's like, man, are people gonna come to this thing? And then, like, they always show up in droves, and like it'll be like the night of, and I'm like, man, I don't know if people are gonna come. And then, like, I go on stage to, like, set up my gear, and it's like, Forrester! And there's, like, so many people there for us, just, like, screaming our names, and I'm like, well, this is pretty cool.
This feels nice.
Yeah, this feels good. I could get used to this. Yeah, so, and the fans that we have, like, we're still pretty grassroots, but, like, man, we've got some awesome fans.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so it was like that this time. Like, the sets are like, spaced out throughout the night, and so, there's some other bands there that had some people there for them, but, like, man, like, we go on and the place is just, like, packed out. And so we played, got off stage, and we were like, I think we crushed it. Like,
right.
I'm feeling good about this. And then, waited for the end of the night for them to announce the results. And we got the entire audience vote and the judges vote, and, like, swept the entire thing with 1,205 points. I think the runner-up had 482 points.
Yeah. Not
really sure how points work, but getting over twice as many as the runner-up sounds good.
Sounds nice. 3 times almost.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was a good night for us. We were pretty happy about that. So on to round 2. I think our round 2 performance is going to be January 8th, which is
spaced out.
Yeah, it's really well. 72 bands. It's every Wednesday night for the next 3 months.
Gotcha.
So it's pretty intense.
So your first round is over. The whole first round.
Our first round is over.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So yeah, and that's the only prize for that is getting to round 2. So us and the runner-up go to round 2, and yeah, round 2 is gonna be cool. It's good that it's spaced out because it's a fairly when you're playing shows in your hometown, you don't want to do too many in a short space of time because you're overplaying your market is what people say, and you can't get your fans won't show up because think about how many times do you go to a concert of the same band?
Yeah,
you're going to the next one. You said
no. I'm saying I'll go to the next one.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
and
that's the mentality. That's
the mentality. Also, I just saw them. It's probably going to be the same stuff. Which it's not. Every show that we're playing for this contest, it's only 25-minute sets, so we can pretty much play a different set every time.
Oh, that'd be great.
Which is pretty fun. Yeah. So that's something that'll keep our fans coming out. And we're coming out with a lot of we played 2 brand new songs that no one had ever heard before at this show.
Well, and here's the thing. So since you've been doing that, have you been getting some offers from people in the area to come play?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot?
Not...
I mean, compared to...
Not a lot, but the caliber of show we've been
offered. Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So we... I'm trying to think what I can say.
You can be vague.
So it was really cool. It was very affirming and a little disappointing because it didn't actually come through. But there was a Live Nation representative who was there that night who offered us a show. The next day, she offered us a show opening for a pretty big band at Old National Center. And
wow.
It was... So at first we're like, hey, we've freaking made it. This is
moment,
cool.
Right?
Yeah, we were like, man, it's better than winning. This is awesome because that's a big thing we've been working towards. And then they changed their minds. They decided to go with the touring band instead of a local opener. And it's okay, well, not this time, but.
The fact that that's a possibility because of this is awesome.
Yeah, it was super. It was just affirming of everything we've done, and that we were good enough that night that somebody who books, national and international tours is hey, you want to jump on this at one of the best venues in the city? That felt really good.
Yeah.
So and that door is still very much open. It wasn't her call to kick us off that show. So we weren't even really on it, but she was vouching for us. She was trying to put us on it. So yeah. So that's the kind of thing that I'm hoping as we keep as we keep impressing people and we keep having our awesome fans show up and we keep killing it, climbing through the ranks, we're gonna hopefully keep getting offers like that, and don't know exactly when it'll be, but we're in a different place now of it took us, it feels like it took us so long to get to this point, even though we've been a band for we've officially we've been a band for about a year. Unofficially, we've been a band for 4 years.
Right.
So, because we started at the second half of my freshman year of college, and I've been.
Because I remember you guys recording in the Fine Arts Building.
Yeah.
And because I remember watching you guys take your stuff out and helping one time. So yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of us have been together for a very long time.
Which helps.
It helps a ton because now that we're finally getting some recognition, it's people are like, oh my gosh, this like brand new band, like how do they sound like they've been playing together for years? And it's like, well, because we've been playing together for years, and it took us this long to figure out our sound.
So what is your sound?
Indie pop.
Indie pop.
So yeah, which
can you give me somebody who I might know who I could be like, oh, that makes sense, or I know what that sound is?
Yeah, Halsey. Let's see. Who's the one that I always tell people that everybody knows? Man, I hate it when people ask me names because 1975. There, yeah. What's the other kids with the pumped up kicks? Those people whose name I forget.
I don't know either.
You ever listen to 1975?
Okay, so here's the thing. I'm not a big new music person.
Oh, okay.
I will very
why
much...
the hell are we here?
Well, because I can support bands. I can support people I know and go out and listen to their music and enjoy it. But the whole like what's popular right now, half the time it's annoying to me, which is why I don't try to.
Interesting. Oh, you gotta listen to some better music, man.
Well,
there's good new music coming out. It's just the old stuff's already been curated for you.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
That's it. And people are like, "There's no good music anymore." It's just like, well,
no, I know there's good music. I just don't think what's popular is always good music. That's my beef.
But that's where the indie word comes in.
Oh,
because
trying to save it now.
Yeah, no, because it's like, yeah, we're pop, but it's like the stuff that I listen to is always very on the. It's gonna make me sound douchey, but it's always on the fringes of popularity, like stuff that like you may have sort of heard of, but you're not exactly sure why. And like if you're in the music world, you know who they are, but if you're not, like, so like my shirt that I'm wearing right now, John Bellion, just saw him a few weeks ago at White River downtown. He's like. He could be as popular as he wants to be. Like he's writing songs for like he wrote Eminem's Monster.
What?
Yeah, but like nobody knows it, and he's touring and he's like selling out these like huge venues all over the country, but
he's just not marketing himself.
He doesn't have to because he's comfortable having a loyal fan base.
I'd be comfortable selling out. Yeah.
Not
I'd be comfortable selling out different venues and making money that way.
Right, but like he doesn't really care about having his songs at the top of the charts. He'd rather make songs that he wants to make.
Yeah.
So like the most recent album that he put out, Glory Sound Prep. None of those songs are gonna be chart toppers because they're more than 2.5 minutes long and they have. Like because multiple sections, they don't follow the formula, and they weren't ever intended to follow the formula. Gotcha. They're music that he wanted to make. That said, he co-wrote Maroon 5's latest single. He co-wrote Camila Cabello's latest singles. He co-wrote Halsey's latest single.
So this guy is phenomenal, is what you're saying.
Yes, he's like the best.
But he's just letting himself be in the background because he enjoys it.
Yeah, and
that's awesome.
That's
fantastic.
He's got he's married. Nobody knows what his wife's name is. Like you can't find any information on her anywhere. So like he's very much protecting his private life and his family life.
He's like Keanu Reeves.
Yeah,
of the music industry.
He's Yeah, you can't.
You
can't
just don't know anything about him,
right?
Yeah,
it's like that's how. Even more so, that's how Prince was. Like he was so private. Like nobody really knew. Which, for Prince, I think that sort of elevated him to this like godlike level, which was actually kind of brilliant because nobody knew.
He was popular enough that it didn't matter.
Right, but that was also an age when people.
That wasn't a thing.
People followed musicians. Just like they just listened to people's music, they didn't really care about their personal lives. And now, in the age of social media, it's like if you're not like basically naked to the world, you can't even really succeed.
I don't think there's a whole lot of artists nowadays who are popular who are naked to the world. I think
they're pretending to be, though.
Right. But it's so obvious that the fact that you just were like, but they're pretending to be. Yeah, we know that they're pretending to be.
Right.
Like every part of us knows there's a publicist behind every Instagram post telling you,
Yeah.
hey, do this. Like, don't be an idiot. The other one who maybe I could give credit to is Demi Lovato, but
I haven't followed her a whole lot, but I know she's pretty honest about a lot of things.
Yeah,
like
she has a lot of
mental health and yeah.
Thing
Well,
is,
there's different artists who are doing that, like but that's like John Bellion. Like he doesn't even try. Like he just doesn't post. He doesn't. It's just his music is just so good. It speaks for itself.
Well, it sounds like it's also a personality trait because a lot of people nowadays that's so not normal to not have a social media presence.
Right.
So maybe it's just like he's this personality. It's just like I don't need that.
And I go so back and forth on that. I'm like, sometimes I'm like, man, I do not want to bother with social media. I want to be in the real world.
Yeah.
Like, and then sometimes it's like, it's addictive. Like you get a little bit of affirmation on social media, and suddenly it's like, oh, everything's about social media, and I got it, and it's like,
what do you think this podcast is for me, man? What do you? No, it's actually funny because that's exactly how I feel. But the only reason I really have a Twitter right now, and the only reason I'll use it is to promote this. To promote it on Instagram and Facebook.
Twitter sucks.
Twitter does suck, but the other reason I like Twitter is because of wrestling, because I'm a huge wrestling fan.
Okay.
So that wrestling Twitter is enough to get me through needing a social media fix. We'll just put it at that.
Sure.
There's enough drama there that I'm like, all right, this could be fun for about 10 minutes, and I can just decide and not worry. But social media is weird. I agree. I think it's a weird thing with our generation that we're gonna have to learn how to live without soon.
Live without social media?
Yeah, I think we need to learn how to do that soon.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's gonna be horrible.
I'm sort of in this weird spot right now where social media was just like a very normal part of life for me for a while.
Yeah.
Like, and it was enough ingrained in our culture that I was like, this is just sort of the new normal, get used to it.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if, like, real life is almost going to make a comeback here soon.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Because
exactly what you said.
Because, like, I'm tired of it.
Yeah, no. But it's that thing you said, this is life now. Deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how social media and a lot of things are presented in our culture.
Yeah.
And I think millennials and... I want to give credit to millennials for it because we're the ones who've been dealing primarily with it. That's bullshit.
Sure.
We're just getting to the point of being like, no, fuck you. I wanna do what I want.
Right.
We're 20, 30 years
old. Which is a very millennial mindset, but not always a bad one. Like,
no, absolutely.
I think
it can be amazing.
Yeah, because I think it's going to result in a lot of
change.
A lot of like drastic cultural impact. Some in not good ways, but like one way that I think it's been phenomenal so far, and I think millennials are like largely responsible for, is the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
People are like, women have been putting up with this crap for as long as anybody can remember, and we're finally getting to a point where people are standing up and being like, you know what, this is not okay. Just because this has been a part of our
culture,
ancestors'
society.
culture for so long doesn't mean it needs to be a part of ours.
Now I will say that there is that mentality, but then there's also the internet, which takes things and sometimes makes it worse than it needs to be.
Sure.
Because there's been, I don't know, because the Me Too movement had some collateral damage. There were some people who were collateral damage from it.
I would argue that it had less collateral damage than the absence of it did.
I would agree. I will agree with that.
I do think that the whole like cancel culture thing is sort of a negative.
Okay, you see exactly where I was going.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. I'm in agreement with you about that. Yeah. Like there is very much a like, oh, this guy said something on social media 15 years ago.
Have you seen Dave Chappelle's new special?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know exactly where I was going with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, Dave Chappelle...
I fucking love Dave Chappelle.
he
He is such a phenomenal social commentator. Because that's what his entire special was, and they shout on him for no reason for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to, I don't know. Like, I watched that special, and, like, yeah, it was freaking hilarious. That said, I don't know. Like,
no, go ahead. Come on.
I understand why people were offended by it, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, like, I watched Finding, what is it called? Finding Neverland?
Yeah.
The Michael Jackson documentary.
Yeah.
I watched that all the way through, and I don't know how you can watch that and not believe those people.
Here's the thing. There's actually, I don't know if it's one or two, like multiple lawsuits against them for making that documentary right now.
Sure, but that happened with Straight Outta Compton. That happens anytime you come out with a movie that points out wrongdoing by somebody else. Like, everyone's going to sue you for defamation of character.
But it's more than that. There's also there's some evidence that some of it was fake. That some of it was not honest. That other people have come out. So, like, it's just the timing of it is. And here's the other side of cancel culture, which I like.
Mm-hmm.
The side that's opposing cancel culture that says, well, wait, what about all this other information that we find that's disproving you trying to defame or admonish this person? Because I think that part of the internet, the parts that's like, no, hold on. Why are we being dramatic? What about all these other positive things? What about the fact that, oh, maybe this isn't as honest? Like, so this one girl I was talking with, she mentioned she liked Jeffree Star. So completely jumping avenues of culture. Jeffree Star, makeup YouTuber, right?
Okay.
There's this huge drama story between him and somebody else because there was alleged, I don't want to say sexual provocation, but like predatory, like of a predatory nature from this other guy.
Okay.
And it was all being promoted by Jeffree Star. And then it all came out to be fake.
Oof.
Right.
Oof.
And she was like, oh, I love him so much. I was like, why? She's like, well, because I just like him. And I was like, so you're going to take this guy and appreciate who he is for what he does, but then you're also going to approve of him having this negative behavior, even though you'd criticize somebody else for having... So it's
well, there was also that guy... Who was the actor who like said that he was jumped and had a noose put around his neck?
Oh, God, the one that Dave Chappelle does a bit about.
Yeah, that, oh my gosh. Like, I was so glad that he got caught. Yeah, and called out.
He's not getting in trouble for it, though. You heard about
that?
Really? Yeah. No. So he was going to be in court, and they dismissed it. They dismissed his case. Yep.
But
yeah. How fucked up is that?
Yeah, that's pretty dumb.
Yeah.
See, so that's the thing. Like, it is resulting in this.
We have a weird cultural double standard that's developing.
Yeah, no, it is true. Like, it is this new thing of, like, people, well, I guess it's not, like, people are always quick to point the finger, right? And
absolutely.
Everybody's like,
now we're just
I think there is a lot of, like, oh, that guy messed up, that guy messed up, that guy messed up, that guy's a piece of crap because he, said something.
Which is interesting, though, because you said we always point the finger, right? We're all, in every generation.
Yeah,
the thing is, now we don't do it towards groups anymore.
Now we do it towards individuals.
Well, actually, I can't even say that, because who's the group that you point the finger towards now? White men.
Right. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say there's not a group, but really that's the only one. But even then, like, I think it's more focused on pointing the finger at people than
saying that is, we're two white men.
We are. But I mean it's true though. That's the go-to, because it used to be like, you had the Jews before World War II, before the Holocaust.
Sure.
You had Italians during immigration, right? You kind of have Mexicans depending on how conservative you are. There are groups, but I think like the other groups that you would expect the finger to be pointed at, it's not. Because we have this social media development, and we have these groups that just swarm out of nowhere sometimes, and it's awesome in some regards.
Right.
But obviously, also as we're discussing, it's a weird positive negative, and I think we're still trying to find the balance.
What I felt weird with the Me Too movement, there were people who were almost hijacking it to make themselves like like Adam Levine and Maroon 5.
Mm-hmm.
Like 3 or 4 years ago, they did a music video for. Well, first of all, the song "Animals" that they came out with. I don't know if you know that song.
I haven't heard it yet.
Baby, I'm preying on you tonight, hunt you down and eat you alive, just like animals.
Yeah.
Is the chorus, and the video was literally Adam Levine stalking a woman and raping her, and it was. Which, like, it was, I don't know, like, the woman was played by his wife, which is somehow weirder, in the video. But it was,
there are fantasies.
The video was just...
Yeah, it was gruesome.
So, like, cringy. Like, why are you doing this? And then, 4 years later or whatever, the Me Too movement is happening, and in this song, the video is featuring all of these like celebrity women, and was basically like Adam Levine, like, you know, showing how supportive he is of like Me Too and all this stuff, and I'm like, you're such a panderer and a bandwagoner. Like, you're just like, you're jumping on this to make yourself look good, but like, I know
everybody did though. What are you talking
Adam
about?
Levine is not like a strong like spokesperson for like women's rights. He's just totally jumping on the bandwagon. That's how I feel about it anyway.
Well, I mean, a lot of artists and a lot of people in the spotlight do that though.
Right.
Like, they jump on bandwagons, they jump on things just so they're not associated with the other that's negative right now.
Right. And well, and like you said, like a publicist is behind, all of those decisions for somebody of that.
How can you capitalize on the current movement to make yourself look better?
Right.
I mean, it's sad, but that's a part of our culture. That's just where people are. I think we're just so worried about being associated with the other. Yeah. In a situation like that.
I found it cool. I'm just always impressed by people who are able to stay out of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Peyton Manning years ago talking about, like, somebody asked him why he's not more outspoken about his faith. And his response was like, because I don't want people to, see how I act on or off the field and either call me a hypocrite or say, like, oh, he's, like, Peyton Manning's doing this, so, like, this is how Christians should behave. Like, he just didn't want to be seen as, like, as that. He didn't want to be, like, a leader in that way. And I think it's important for people to, before you, like, if you have a position of influence, think about whether you need to use that position to influence in a specific way, or maybe there's other people who are more qualified than you.
Which is so annoying with how hard people try to do that nowadays. How hard people try to be influencers and feel like they matter.
Yeah. Well, and, like, you have to...
I think it's annoying, man, because, like, we have people who have no talent who have millions of dollars just because their influences, like, they don't even have really charisma. They just have a pretty face, or they're kind of funny. And by kind of funny, I mean they're funny to laugh at, like Liza Koshy. I don't think she's funny at all. I think she's funny to laugh at.
She's that YouTuber, right?
Yeah, she has her own, like, show. And then who's the one chick who has Superwoman?
I saw her filming when I was in California a couple years ago. That was weird. And
then you have, who's the one chick who's doing, like, The Late Show now? Who had, like, one episode of The Late Show. I don't know if she's had more or not. But Superwoman is what her tag used to be. I don't know. I'm like, you go from being a YouTuber and being, like, this kind of popular influencer type person, and it just seems like they're just being given so much just because they can be advertised. And I'm like, man, that's so fucked up. Like, we don't value people anymore.
Yeah.
We just value what they can make us.
Well, and even the late night thing is interesting because...
I mean, it's cool. Like, it's awesome to see somebody do that, but then you think about it and you're like, oh, it's because she's a woman and she's of color and because that's marketable. If you really think about it, because I don't know anything about her that shouts talent to me.
Yeah. I don't know who you're talking about specifically, but
I can't think of her name. Lily Singh, I think that's her name. But she like just started a late night show.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely happens though.
I also just picked 2 women. I feel like I should pick a guy now. I mean.
Well, what about like with late night?
Jimmy Kimmel needs to stop doing late night. He does. He needs to stop. Fallon, I think, is entertaining at least.
Fallon is fun. Fallon's really fun.
But I think he's also getting fake the more he's doing it. I think he needs to take a break from it for a little while. I think he'd be better for it.
Who's the
Conan?
No,
Conan's fucking great, by the way.
The black guy who was just doing like stand up and now he's why can't I remember his name?
Not being specific. Which guy? What's he look like? What's his bits? What's he do?
He's got the like
Key and Peele?
No, Key and Peele's awesome.
By the way, Jordan Peele.
Dude.
Holy shit.
What a talented
how fucking
dude.
out of the box did he just explode
Right, yeah.
the last
oh
few
my
years?
gosh. Yeah.
How amazing is
Which
that?
I haven't seen Us yet, and I really
I need to see both of his movies. I need to see Get Out. And
Have you not seen Get Out?
I have not.
Oh, Get Out's
I'm a
phenomenal.
I know. I need to go see him.
Gosh, dude, it's so good.
The other thing is him, and then this other guy who I've been following, who I'm interested to see how he does. See, again, I'm picking guys. I'm not picking women. Sexist to me. John Mulaney. John Mulaney.
I know that name. Why do I know that name?
Because he's a stand-up. He has a couple of
Oh
specials
yeah,
on
yeah,
Netflix.
yeah.
And he's in Big Mouth, which I fucking love Big Mouth.
Okay.
Big Mouth is one of my favorite shows now. But I see him, and I see him growing kind of in popularity. I was like, oh man, I hope he does. I hope he just explodes. Not like, I don't think anybody can like Jordan Peele did, because he blew everybody's expectations away. It was amazing. I'm so impressed by that man. He went from being Obama and having Keegan-Michael Key be his anger translator to just being this amazing director who's like, yeah, no, I'm just casting who I want to cast. Like, I can write stories for black people. It doesn't have to be a black or white thing. And I love that. I love how his approach was to it. And I was like, fuck yes, dude.
I think they're... Like, Jordan Peele is making... Well, and I think that's been a really positive cultural movement, too, is like...
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, but he's making movies from a black perspective. And it's a perspective that's never really been represented in Hollywood before. And
he's
I think
been using horror.
Yeah.
Which is even better.
Like
awesome,
the
fact that he's using it just as a way to tell a story, I'm like, yes, this is awesome. God, we kind of went on a tangent. I'm trying to... Oh, yeah, I have to go back and find somebody negative to talk to. Oh, yeah. So Jimmy Kimmel, I've never found him funny. I also don't like his pandering. I don't like his political commentary whenever he gets on. I think he's annoying.
The fact that I can't remember this talk show host's name is...
That's probably bad.
Drive me
Are you
crazy.
thinking Eric Andre?
No, he's like super popular right now. The name is just... Anytime I'm like...
I don't know.
Like, I swear if we weren't having this conversation, I would remember his name.
I don't know any black talk show hosts off the top of my head.
Let's see. Oh, I'll be able to... Let's see.
I just looked at talk show hosts. Every single one of them is a white man.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Also, if you guys heard that was Michael's wife, Katie.
This guy. Trevor Noah. That's who I'm thinking of.
Oh, get the fuck out of here. Trevor Noah's bullshit.
Right, but like, so... He was funny in stand-up.
Yeah, his stand-up's great.
Right, but...
His Daily Show is terrible.
But then he's like... Okay, I'm a political commentator now. And it's like... Why... Like, but like, people are... But that's just like pointing out someone who's like... I don't know... Just because somebody's funny...
Yeah.
Then we give them a position of influence.
Yeah.
And I think an even better example of that is in Christian culture, where musicians have become pastors essentially.
Ooh, come on!
And it's like we've elevated like Hillsong and Bethel and like all of these sort of Christian celebrities who are talented in music and turn them into influencers of Christian culture.
Oh man, you brought that all the way around. I'm so proud of you. I don't even know how to deal with that because I was gonna go a totally other direction. I was gonna go with the philosophy of
and like
comedians.
We were talking about dating culture, and something that I didn't get to mention earlier when we were talking about it is Joshua Harris, who wrote the. Do you know this book?
I've read it.
Okay, I Kissed Dating Goodbye. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which he actually just came out as
said that was dumb.
Well, he did that, but even more recently,
Mm-hmm.
now he's saying he's not a Christian anymore.
Yeah. Oh, dude.
And
Michael Gungor is not a Christian anymore.
Oh, Gungor, really?
Yeah, the guy who made one of my favorite worship songs.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oof.
He wrote a book and everything. My friend Jeshua Cooper. I don't know if you knew Jeshua.
Mm-mm.
I had him on the podcast a little while ago. He was telling me about it. Yeah, Michael Gungor. He wrote a book. He had his kid, and I guess just through processing through certain things, he's like, yeah, I don't think I want to be a part of this anymore. It's not.
But here's
I
the
think
thing.
he's more like Buddhist or something.
Here's the thing about Joshua Harris. I saw an interview with him a couple years ago where he said, he admitted, he was like, I've lived my life backwards. Like when I was 19 years old, I had like tons of leadership over millions of people through my book and through the church organization, which incidentally is the church organization that my wife grew up in.
Yeah.
I'm
glad that you're not mentioning it. That's okay. We can leave it out. You don't have to mention it.
So, it's just, yeah, so they, anyway, he talked about, like, he admitted, I lived my life backwards, like, I had way too much influence too early, I'm gonna, like, take a break from leadership, and I'm gonna go back to school, and I'm gonna, like, learn from other people now.
I'm gonna actually learn instead of just talking.
Right, and then a couple years after that, he decides he's not a believer anymore.
Yeah.
And what does he do? He makes a Netflix special. So now he's still.
Wait,
like,
he has a Netflix special?
He does.
What's it about?
The guy, it's.
Is it a stand-up?
No, but it's
awesome.
like about him writing "I Kissed Dating Goodbye" and like and coming to all these realizations and stuff.
Kinda.
And it's like the dude is addicted to the spotlight. Like, why can't he just like shut up and like figure out what he believes and not feel like
know how to deal without it?
Probably, yeah.
I mean, look at every child.
Like, why doesn't he
star.
take a break from leadership?
But look at every child star. Look
Sure.
at everybody who grew up who had influence early. Even these YouTubers and these Instagram people.
Mm-hmm.
They get it when they're like 18, 19, 20.
Sure.
Or even younger. And it just builds and builds, and you see chaos, and you see where it doesn't stop.
Right. Well, and for a lot of people, like Justin Bieber, I know he gets like a really bad.
Oh, dude, he finally got his shit figured out, and I'm so proud of him.
Well, and like I saw,
he finally has taken time. It's awesome.
Yeah,
like
and
you can see it.
And I think it's been like I used to be one of those people who like I definitely like slammed him pretty hard, and
definitely.
I kind of regret that because I feel like
no, you should have.
I mean, yeah, he was a Disney
product.
Yes,
that's all he was.
He was being entitled and stupid.
And then he was a hip hop product. And now he's going to become his own product, and his next album he's going to release is going to be amazing. I'm putting it down right now. If he makes
yeah, it's probably going to be good.
No, it will because he's finally going to be himself. Like imagine that. How awesome!
But he talked about how like he just did a long like Instagram post where he was talking about how he went from having nothing to having everything at the age of like 17.
Yeah.
Like, access to anything that he wanted.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he was like, yeah, I just didn't know how to cope with that. And I feel that. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know that I would have been any different at that age, you know?
Nobody would. That's the thing. That is absolutely the thing. Nobody would know how to deal with that at that age. Nobody should know how to deal with that at that age.
Right. And I wonder...
I mean, look at Macaulay Culkin now. He went through, like, doing stupid stuff, and now so he was actually on the Joe Rogan podcast. I was listening to it.
Nice.
And he has this... Is the funniest, but, like, sweetest thing I had heard somebody say recently. He has this little ribbon. It's a participation ribbon. That's just, like, safety pin to whatever he wears. And he's like, yeah, I just carry around this participation ribbon because, you know, I'm participating in life. I'm here. And I was like,
nice.
that's like so pure. Like there's
cool.
this piece of him, and he's like, yeah, I don't know, I just don't think about how successful I was. I'm just like, I mean, yeah, it made me live comfortably. Like I can just move and do whatever, which is great, and I realize that's awesome. But like I don't feel a need to go back and act. Like
Sure.
I did this movie with a friend of mine just because it sounded fun, but that's I don't feel the need to go back to it.
Right.
And like there's
cool.
essentially those two reactions. You either get people who just like settle in, they're like, okay, this is just a piece of my life, not my whole life. Or you have, this is my whole life and this is all I have.
Right.
Which is
Which is why I respect John Bellion so much.
Yeah.
Because
but
he's like,
he was intentional though.
Yeah.
He was intentional about not.
But that's because he didn't become famous as a kid.
Yeah.
When you're a kid, you get that fame. There's no way you know how to be intentional about that.
Absolutely.
And so I don't like. Yeah, Justin Bieber did some stupid things. I think he's been ridiculed plenty for the things that he did.
He got punched by Orlando Bloom. I think that's enough.
Oh yeah, he did, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Which, man, what a child is Orlando Bloom.
That's a whole other conversation. That's a whole other conversation. Gosh. No, so
a genuinely beautiful man, but man, why was he feuding with
Justin Bieber
with a kid?
Yeah, I don't even remember why. But here's my thing. So we kind of went off of it, but I want to go back to it real quick.
Sure.
And then I'm going to come back to the religious conversation because there's another point I want to make with that. So the philosophy of comedians and how important they are in our society right now. We are in a position where our society is near chaos. We're on the brink. So I just watched Joker yesterday. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
I haven't seen it yet, yeah.
So I'm going to try not to spoil anything, but essentially there's this movement that comes about. The Joker's bad. Well, the Joker's bad. But the start of it, he ends up killing some people, and that ends up motivating a lot of people to start rising up against the upper class.
Sure.
So it's like very political kind of message that starts off the movie and like is kind of the premise developing throughout, kind of in the background while the Joker is the main focus of the movie. And in the end, you just have all this chaos and all this craziness and all this like manic destruction of the city because they're just rioting because they're so upset about the situation because there's been thing after thing after thing. And I think our culture is very much at a point where we are at the precipice of chaos. We're at this point that if something tipped us over, it would just be chaotic. I think things could very easily just become a mess.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think the only way to keep us from that is an actual comedian, not the Joker, not this dark fucking killing people is my comedy. No. Because what is the point of a comedian? Well, they are to be the jester. They're to be the one who delivers news to the king.
Comic relief, right?
Well, kind of, because a jester's role in the court was to deliver news to the king and to present it in a way and to present society and the understanding of what was going on. So jesters were always supposed to be rather intelligent. Most comedians are very intelligent.
Yeah.
They know how to give commentary on society well that helps them then create a bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the philosophy I see of our culture right now is we need more comedians because we need to figure out what the hell we're doing.
Interesting.
Because we need more jesters to point out these things that we're doing that's dumb, and we need to pay attention to it and recognize, okay, is this jester pointing me and guiding me in the right way? Or is this person just spouting something to be popular like certain comedians nowadays?
Interesting.
So
you are advocating for more intelligent comedy.
Not even more intelligent. It can be as raunchy as hell, but if it's good social commentary, it's good social commentary. Like if you did a whole set on dating, it would mostly be about sex and our understanding of sexuality and how we interpret that. Big Mouth. Yeah. Big Mouth is a comedy all about sex and puberty and how terrible and stupid it is. And it's one of the most apt descriptions of puberty and life that I have ever seen outside of all these stupid teen movies we grew up with that didn't describe it well at all. It described the awkwardness that we could relate to and laugh with. Mm-hmm. That was about it.
Right.
So it's really cool to see as I'm getting older this philosophy of comedians and how comics can really help our culture grow. But we also have some really bad comics like Amy Schumer. Or people who just have bad commentary. And that's annoying. Like Trevor Noah.
Just pointing out, you just mentioned another woman.
I don't give two fucks about that. I will hate on Amy Schumer. She steals jokes like Carlos Mencia. She can go in the corner with Carlos Mencia for all I care. She does. She steals jokes, and I hate it. But
like fuck Jerry.
Huh?
Like fuck Jerry.
Fuck Jerry was always a meme.
Meme thief.
They were always a meme. Who cares? it's a meme stealing memes. What's the problem there? They make money off of it. Who cares?
Did you know that?
I did hear about what happened with that though.
Well, did you watch the documentary about? Sorry, another tangent. But the Fire Music Festival.
I didn't watch the documentary for it yet.
Dude, you gotta watch it.
I've heard it.
If you want to just like laugh your butt off for a couple hours,
they're
like
crazy.
Oh
the whole Fire Fest.
But Fuck Jerry was behind that. Like they were the marketing team behind it, which I think is amazing.
Hilarious.
Like,
It's good.
Yeah, I man, that is. Well, there's two documentaries and they're both good. But the Hulu one has an interview with.
That's the one I've heard to watch. Is the Hulu one?
Yeah.
So I watched two documentaries recently. I actually purchased them. Look at me being bougie.
Whoa, dude, you're like so rich.
Right.
You didn't
one
torrent them.
Yeah, right. Well, no, because I was just looking up documentaries and I saw these and they sounded interesting. So I was like, all right, I'll watch them. And I was like, oh, the only way to get them is pay through Google Play. I was like, all right, sure, whatever. And it was worth it. Both of them were. So
the first $40 to watch.
No, it was just like a regular movie purchase. It wasn't crazy. But the one was called Kumare, and it's about this guy who. And I've talked about this before. He wants to give a social commentary on gurus and like how we see like life gurus. He's like, yeah, a lot of these people are fake. Like my grandmother was Hindi. Growing up, I always saw her practice and pray, and it always made me interested. Went to college for religion and ended up pushing me more away from it. I was like, I know what he's talking about. I know that too. And then he's like, he ends up becoming a guru. He grows his hair out. He grows his beard out. And he becomes Kumare. He becomes this character to be a guru. Okay, so he starts teaching yoga and starts like teaching these life classes. And like just throughout the process, he kind of sees how far he can push it to the point that he draws a penis on some guy's head and has him like pray to a picture of like Osama bin Laden and like two other people just to see how far he can push it. It was awful. Like that side of it, you're like, oh god, this is so funny. But then it twists on him. He goes and meets this guy who's pretty much like a cult leader. Like that's how rough it is.
Okay.
He like has this farm out in nowhere that these people are like, yeah, we don't know what we do without him. And it's like, oh, this is why I wanted to start this experiment. And then he actually creates a teaching for his students that are following him. And he says, listen, I'm not your guru. You are your own guru. And he starts training them to start like internally process things and like develop a strategy of dealing with life and like planning so that they can actually become their own guru so they don't feel like they need to seek outside help. And then he leaves and he comes back 3 months later with all of his hair trimmed in regular clothes and says, hello, fellow gurus. My real name is this. And just completely comes out and opens up and says, yeah, this turned into wanting to help you. And a little over half of the people actually still keep in contact with him. And still, like, actually learned from that, other than just being a social experiment. Like, they're like, no, this was still amazingly helpful to me. Thank you for opening me up to being able to help myself. So, like, that was the first one, which is amazingly interesting to watch. The second one was really on Scientology.
Involved. Okay.
Yeah. So the Scientology one was interesting. It was
so you know Josh, the Scientologist?
No. It was investigating Scientology, and they literally couldn't because of how the power systems are set up. It's weird, dude. It's weird. Like I recommend looking up documentaries on it, but it is Scientology.
Did you hear about the Scientology cruise that was recently quarantined because everyone got sick? They couldn't come back to port because
But the funny thing is, so going back to the Kumare documentary, so in a lot of ways he was a comedian. He was a jester.
Right.
So take that philosophy and let's bring that to Christianity.
In what way?
I think we need to start not taking the church so seriously. Because what you said earlier really got to me and was really significant to how I see faith. Like, everything is a part of creation, everything is a part of God. Like, it's almost gotten to the point where I'm like, I could probably shift to universalist speak real quick with how I talk about God and everything. Just because, like, for me, it shouldn't be as complicated and as messy as we try to make rules for. I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right when you said that earlier. I don't know if you were recording or not yet at that point, but I think the idea that we have a basic idea of love God and love others,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to stop worrying so much about what God's will is, and about enforcing our will in our government and on our politics.
Yeah.
And I think we need to just be a jester. Like, I think pastors need to be more jesters than they do political figures. I think we need to have jesters who are going to come up and say, hey, so this is dumb. Here's why. Because there's a lot of biblical principles behind being a jester. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
have... How we talk about sex is awful. Because we don't know how to do it. Because we can't have a sense of humor about it. If you don't have a sense of humor with sex, if you've never laughed during sex, then you've not had sex. If you haven't had a moment where you just stop and you start laughing with the other person, then you need to broaden your sexual experience. Like, you can't be yourself. That's never... You know what I'm talking about, though. If you never have that moment, then you don't know how to express yourself sexually. If you can't be open enough to laugh during sex, then what's the point? I feel like if a pastor ever told me that in a youth group, I would have been like, what? Sex isn't just about keeping myself pure? What? There are kinks? What are kinks? God, dude, if the church talked about kinks, do you know how many people wouldn't have kinks coming out of youth group in college?
I can just see, yeah, so tonight's youth group topic, sexual kinks.
I would do it.
Weren't you like a youth pastor?
I was. Because, like, I don't know, man, So I care about the church,
Mm-hmm.
which I want people to know. I care about the church. I do not care for what the church is right now.
In what way?
So one of the themes, again, we keep kind of going around this, is the point of millennials are saying, fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck you, this isn't good enough.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
With the church.
With a lot of things, with the church especially.
A lot of people are there with the church.
But they don't, but they're not.
No?
No, because if you actually gave a shit, you'd stick around. You'd still try to do something. People leave the church when they say, fuck you, I don't like this.
Okay.
There's a difference. There's a
So
difference.
you're at the point where you're like, this is stupid, let's change it.
Yes. But I want somebody to listen to me.
So
hear it,
what
do it.
specifically are you seeing that you're like, this isn't cool, we need to change it?
We need to stop pretending like we love people and do it. So here's a funny thing, and this is not to knock on the church that did it, because it was out of a good place. So at my job, we recently had a church come in to do a service lunch.
Uh-huh.
And so this past Sunday they came in and they were like, hey, we're going to give lunch to your clients. And I was like, oh, that's great. That's cool. And we knew they were supposed to come at 11. We had two groups from the same church, but a different campus, because that's the other thing. Mega churches that really are just multiple campus churches are annoying, and that's a whole other topic. But anyway. But like literally No, I'm good. There were two other churches that... Well, the same church, but different campuses that showed up. One of them was from, like, Westfield. And I'm like, you guys are so well-intentioned, and that's great, but you're literally just coming out to help to make yourself feel better. I think a lot of times and I developed this idea from AU. I think a lot of times service projects and mission trips and a lot of things like that are to make us feel like we're better Christians than to actually being better Christians.
I gave a...
I think you
persuasive speech
Yes,
for
you
my
did.
speech class about. Well, I might have done it in.
I remember you talking to me about it.
Griffith's class too.
Yeah, you did.
I
remember that.
Yeah, so I might have given multiple speeches about how
Short-term
missions trips are
bad. Yeah. I appreciated that. That stuck with me for the longest time.
Yeah. Not that, I mean, there's some things that I think Christians should actually absolutely be taking the leadership on, like, like hurricane relief is something that's very, like...
But we don't.
Right, because we don't get pictures of us holding little African babies and, you know, like... So
when you're just helping another white person, then what's the difference?
Right, exactly. So it's, it doesn't look as good.
It
doesn't look as good on your social media.
How fucking wrong is that?
Yeah. Which I've known people who have like there was a guy at my church.
No, there's definitely people who do things right. I agree.
Like there's a guy at my church who kept doing missions trips to Muncie, and I think that's pretty cool because Muncie needs a lot of help.
But what is a mission trip? Like, what's the goal of a mission trip? Is what my biggest beef?
For most people, it's a way to have the church pay for your vacation.
Oh, ooh! I was trying to mean in a positive sense. You went straight for the heart. God, man, you went for the throat on that one. I was like, all right. I mean, what do you think the purpose of a mission trip should be?
Right. Generally, I think if you're doing like disaster relief or whatever, then like,
so helping
that's
people,
great,
right?
Yeah.
Not proselytizing or spreading the gospel. That's not what it is.
I don't. Man, if you are trying to spread the gospel to people who you haven't even taken the time to have a relationship with, like, why are they going to listen to you? Like, you might as well just
how genuine is
what some people do and go to Broad Ripple and stand on the street corner at midnight and, scream at people that they're all going to hell. Like,
oh my God. Dude, that is a great analogy. Oh, that's so good. What's the difference between trying to go on a mission trip and spreading God to people you don't know and being a sidewalk prophet?
Right.
Oh, man.
Which?
Not against the sidewalk prophets.
The
who I actually
who came from AU.
Who I actually like.
But what I think is really cool, and there's organizations that are doing this more now, is they are going into countries and training up, like, if the goal of, like, missions is a different thing than, like, disaster relief or humanitarian,
absolutely.
assistance. And I think Christians should absolutely be taking leadership in humanitarian assistance because that's something that we're called to do by Christ. But if your goal is missions, if your goal is spreading the gospel and making, converts to Christianity, I'm completely unqualified to talk about this. This is just my opinion and observation.
Are you a Christian?
But yeah.
Have you read the Bible?
Yeah.
So you have qualifications.
I have opinions.
No, you have qualifications. You can interpret the Bible the same way anybody else can.
Sure. So anyway, I think like I'm impressed when people go into countries and they train locals who have relationships with. Like one is some friends of mine were missionaries for a couple of years in Venezuela. Their plan was to in like the jungle. Mm-hmm.
They were in the bush.
Yeah, it was crazy. They were living on like stilts over the water.
Yeah,
like, it was nuts. And they had a 1-year-old baby with them.
That's nuts.
That's
actually nuts.
Their goal was to stay there for like the foreseeable future, and then it sort of, but through the time they were there, they were able to train some locals who already lived in Venezuela, spoke the language, knew the culture better than they
Customs,
did. And now they're gone, and like the locals are just doing it, and they're starting a church, and they're right, and that's what Paul did. Like Paul would go places and he would start churches, and then he'd say, like, I'm here. Yeah, I'll do check-ins. I'll write you letters. I'm here to continue to shepherd you, but I'm not gonna stay here. I'm gonna go like make disciples in other places, and build churches. And I think that's the model, rather than like assuming that because I know Christ, I can also know your culture. And but I don't know, like, are there don't know that there's that many like short-term mission trips to spread the gospel. Like they all seem to like paint a school or
Yeah, but
clean
there's
up
people
trash
who
or.
go with that mentality is my issue.
You think?
Yeah, it's either this like overexcited idea of like, oh, I'm gonna spread the word to other people,
Sure.
or this self-indulgent, I'm gonna feel better about myself for going, which really annoyed me because the one mission trip I ever went on, right? I went to Belize and they built beds for families. There were about 4 or 5 things that really bothered me about it. One of them was that all the people that we were building beds for were on a list that was generated by the church. And some of these people didn't need them, but they were on the list because they wanted to be. There were some houses that were just shacks that we just went in and we built, and I about cried during one of them. The one thing that I did appreciate is that while we were there, the men had to do all the work. Now, that sounds silly to say that out loud, but what I mean is we had to, because the wood wasn't cut to the right size, we had to pick up the wood that they were cutting for us in the bush, bring it to where we were staying, work on it, then go out, build these beds, come back, work on the rest of the wood for tomorrow, and repeat the cycle. And we did that for about 5 days. It was great. Like, it felt amazing, like, how much work we were doing intentionally behind doing this.
Sure.
However, I was sophomore in college at that time, and a lot of the adults there who were like 30 years or older, who had kids there on the trip, were complaining constantly about the environment and complaining constantly about how things were set up and scheduled and organized and complaining about various things. And I'm sitting here like, okay, listen, vacationer. Like, you're supposed to be the leader here. I'm a college student just kind of going along for the ride at this point. And there were some people who had a good perspective. There were some people who just, I wanted to go up to and be like, listen, you're full of shit right now, and I need you to get off of it. And then when we would come back, and they would just be like, oh yeah, we did this, this, and this, and it was such a like fulfilling thing. I was like, why was it fulfilling? How is that fulfilling?
Sure.
Yeah, we did good things. That shouldn't be a reason for good. So like that helped me develop the idea of that. And then I think shortly after that is when we had that class together and you gave your argument, and I was like, yeah, no.
Did I give that argument in that class?
You did it in postmodern.
Okay.
Because I remember that.
I know I gave one argument in class that, well, because I think I was a sophomore.
Yeah, sounds right.
And I definitely, man, I had I don't know.
I want to apologize, though, because I realized I was an asshole to you sometimes.
Were you?
I think so. I think sometimes we would have conversations, and I would just kind of leave you like, well.
I think you were...
A little bit.
I think I was an asshole to you, too, though.
That's
like,
true.
I feel like I was... I feel like I was just as much as you were. Like, I was thinking about that kind of recently, actually. I was like, man, like, I thought I knew everything.
You did.
Like, I really thought I knew everything.
I did too, though. It's annoying when you look back, you're like, God, I was an asshole.
And I didn't even realize it. I didn't even realize how, like, arrogant I was being. I gave a speech in that class that was, like... Which that was the point of that class, kind of, was to be like, hey, here's how you maybe don't know everything.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I grew a lot through it, but it was... I gave a speech about, like... basically why youth group sucks and why everybody should have essentially the model that like I had growing up.
Yeah.
And, I came across it just like on my computer one day. I was like, I gave that speech. No wonder people didn't like me. Like what? I was like, I would not have liked myself.
Gosh,
like,
yes.
Oh man, yeah.
That's hilarious.
Do you remember that speech?
I vaguely remember that one because I remember being annoyed by that one.
You were annoyed by that, yeah, because we went out for lunch after that, and you were like,
that was
basically dumb. Like, that was stupid, right? It's like,
you know, you're full of shit.
And now,
right?
like 3 years later, I'm like, wow, that was really dumb.
That was dumb.
That was really dumb. Yeah. It was basically like everybody should just like be friends with their parents and like.
Yeah.
Oh man. So
it's cringy.
Yeah.
But it was coming out of the point of understanding you had.
Probably the most homeschool speech I ever gave. Oh my gosh.
Which
I'm sure
I'll
I had
say
a
that
really
is-
good, but that's what college is for, right? You want to debate with people. You want to grow as a person, and
Which is awesome because then now, even coming from that point, you're looking back and cringing. You're like, well, I'm not there anymore.
right.
And how refreshing.
Well, and
is
something that I
for you?
appreciate about you is like
Mhm.
you're a safe person to debate with because you will vehemently disagree with me about things, and I think there's been lots of things that you and I have like really disagreed about very
Which I
openly
think
with
is
each
funny,
other.
'cause now we're not as much disagreeing.
Not in this conversation, anyway.
Not in this one, no.
But there's a lot of like pretty much straight up arguments that we had, but never with like bad blood, and always like
never.
we would always just like keep coming back and just talking more. Like you always just like loved me through it, which was like really cool.
Half the time, and this is why I say I apologize for being an asshole. I was trolling you sometimes. Because I knew for a fact you hadn't gotten through that postmodern point yet. Once you finally got there, you're fine. Once you can go to postmodernism and not just be annoyed with it and kind of recognize it like, oh, that's what this is for, then you're fine.
Right.
Like, oh, interpretation is what we make a reality.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. Then you're good. You
Right.
you can have so many more open conversations and so many more dialogues with people that are healthy and loving and disagreements with people that are still healthy and loving. But you have to be at that point. Otherwise, you can't.
It took me a while to get there.
It did.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I see that though now. It's like, yeah, you probably were just trolling me stuff. Because you'd say stuff that you like sort of knew was going to get me riled up.
Oh, yeah.
Be like, yeah.
But I did it because I wanted you to grow. I wanted you to fight with it.
Right.
Like, that's what I do with people is if I see something, I'm like, I'll find something, I'm like, so, marriage. It's kind of bullshit, isn't it? Just throw that out there. You know, the sanctity of marriage. That's so bullshit. No, I will say, yeah, we've been talking for a while, so we might have to cut this off soon.
Yeah, it's been like an hour and a half.
This has been a pleasure, though.
Yeah,
This has been great.
Fun.
So again, dating is weird.
That's true.
Including finding.
So I've heard.
Including finding women who are in open relationships and married.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You experienced this.
I did. So that's actually where I was coming from. Not actually going
What,
along
like
with the
today?
marriage. No, not today, but relatively recently.
Oh, gotcha.
So going off of the joke of marriage is bullshit, because I don't think marriage is bullshit. I think sometimes how we approach marriage can be bullshit, which I think we agree on. The idea that you can have an open marriage to me is nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something I never thought.
Did you like know she was married?
No, she was completely open about it, and he was okay with it. Yeah.
And you were like, cool, whatever.
I was like, we're down to clown.
Guess I'll try this out.
Well, it's somebody who I had a crush on before, and I
Sure.
didn't know if she was in a relationship or anything, and then months later, messaged her on Facebook and found her, and then we just ended up chatting and had a happy situation, and then it wasn't, and then we're good.
Interesting.
Because that's dating. You have a happy moment, and then sometimes you don't afterwards, and then you're good. You move on. But yeah, no. For me, marriage and like sexuality and how it's taught in youth group, like that's my biggest beef. Because I think, well, and
I'm
it's my own
interested
way.
I'm interested to talk. I know it's been a while, but like
That's okay. We can keep going. I can just cut this
So-
off if we want to.
well, because I feel like
Because that's a big old can of worms.
well,
for
that's yeah. Well, and I know.
me. Well, and did you?
I guess I've had enough conversation
Yeah.
with you to know like. Well, I know you're not happy with like how sex is talked about in the church,
Well, yeah.
which is very fair. I think it's in a lot of ways not.
I'm
well.
very vocal about that. Yeah.
Right. But also, I think, like, you and I have handled our, like, personal practice and view of sex differently.
We've handled our sexuality different. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, because you waited till marriage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
did not.
Right.
I have not.
Right. right.
I'm a practicing sexual person.
Right. Yeah. Fornicator!
Yeah, I'm a practicing fornicator.
Right.
Oh, God, yes, I love that. I love that title.
Practicing
I'm
fornicator.
practicing fornicator.
So, yeah, which...
Which the funny thing is, I actually think there might be a biblical not a biblical argument against it. Not
So
a strong
yeah,
one.
so that's what I wanted to ask you about. Is like because I know
Yeah.
you're a professing believer and
Yeah, absolutely.
and you're as many frustrations as you have with the church, you're
I still love it.
right, and you love
I love
Jesus and
how
yeah. So I get like for me.
Mm-hmm. You like Paul, don't you?
Yeah.
I don't.
But
I don't. He has some good stuff, but when he talks about sexuality, it's complete bullshit.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't like anything he talks about.
But
Sexuality.
I'm also still which is gonna bug you.
No,
But I'm also still I still believe that the whole Bible is the Word of God,
right.
including Paul's words.
Right.
So
and we will agree to disagree on that one.
Right. Yeah. So for me holding that belief, if you have which that makes sense, I guess, because I think it comes down to your view of Scripture, because my view of Scripture is it's the Word of God, and so if I view it that way and I see teachings about sexuality in there, and I'm like, well, I gotta follow these teachings. Yeah. I don't view Joshua Harris as the Word of God. I don't. Absolutely. I think.
So we have another point of disagreement. So. Okay, so
you do view Joshua Harris as the Word of God.
So let me start from Old Testament, New Testament, Current Testament, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So, as far as the idea of the Bible being the Word of God, I am very cautious of ever saying that, because I think there are very bad interpretations of what that can mean, and I think that's where a lot of negative theology comes out.
I'd agree with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm being cautious, because I know that's still a stance you have, but I'm also going to give a debate argument.
Sure.
So
and I do think that stance requires some clarification.
Yeah.
Because there is, I know, like, from our past conversations, this is something I haven't emphasized well when I've talked to you in the past, is like, there's absolutely context, and there's absolutely different formats of different books, and there's different genres, and there's different authors, and there's stuff that needs to be taken into account, and not like there's descriptive versus prescriptive, and there's all of this stuff that still needs to be talked about.
There's a whole lot there that we don't, but that's the thing. When you say Word of God, it doesn't. Which is why I prefer to say the Bible is the story of God. Okay, see, you already like that better. But here's my reasoning. Here's why.
But I'm also not comfortable with...
You're not comfortable with change.
What Paul says is bullshit.
Well, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So, the Bible is the story of God. Because it's the story of the people of God. It's the story of how people interpret God. How people form their relationships, their lives, their cultures around God. Okay? Because that's really what most of the Old Testament and even the New Testament is.
Sure.
Now, the New Testament has a very important factor. That's Jesus.
Right.
You have this very important factor who comes and creates a completely new teaching and simplifies everything. And it's almost like a Hindu approach to religion, where it says it's very simple. Love God, love others, be at peace with reality, and share this with people. What is that? That's having a podcast. That's having a conversation. That's having lunch. That's having a community. That's what that is. So, and there's a lot of great stories and teachings within that. And then you have Paul. So I'm going to rewind again. Mm-hmm. So for me, the Old Testament is a set of stories that helps us develop our understanding of how people saw God. And in that, there's a lot of context. There's a lot of subtext. There's a lot of people who are living at this point of time in the New Testament, writing this point of time in the New Testament, writing beforehand, writing Exodus, writing Leviticus, writing these rules that the people are supposed to live by in order to give them an idea of who they're supposed to be as these people of God.
Sure.
Okay, now with that in mind, Paul came from the background of the priests who were writing the rules for these people who were supposed to be living in a certain time in a certain space. Okay.
Right.
So his context,
which is why half his writings are like, hey, there's a new covenant now.
Right.
And
because he realizes that, but he hasn't separated himself from some of the mentality of that teaching, if you look in his writing. And it's interesting.
Wow, I think his writing is so focused on breaking the mentality of that teaching.
But,
Why do you submit, if you're not of the world, why do you submit to its rules? Do not handle, do not taste, do not touch. These are all, But
that was all something already perpetuated by the Jewish culture.
Right, but he spent so much time arguing against the Jewish culture.
But that was not. That was keeping consistent with it. That was staying with the laws of do not be like these people that were around. Yeah, see, you see that now. You can see where that shading comes in Paul's writings. Well, let me clarify.
Sure, no, continue.
So,
I don't want to cut you off.
So the thing is with that is there's still this kind of segregation mentality there. And it's very much there with some of the writers of the Gospels even, where they say, like they have Jesus saying, you know, I'm going to the Jews. I'm not going to the Gentiles yet. You have Paul finally saying, okay, let's go to the Gentiles.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, you can't be like everyone else. You have to be a counterculture. You can't be culture.
Mm-hmm.
Which still makes it like a cult. which still very much keeps you away from loving God and loving others well, because you're still separating yourself from others. And in the context, it was also like, well, we also have to keep this secret. So there's a lot of weird subtext going on at the same time. Now, the thing is with Paul and how he speaks on sexuality. Again, rewinding to Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
The way we approach sexuality, the way the Hebrews approach sexuality and marriage was women are property. There's very few instances where that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
The only instances they aren't are things that people don't like talking about. Like the fact that Ruth went and slept with Boaz and then married him.
Yeah.
Or when, not Ruth, who's the other, I can't think of her name, woman in the Old Testament. It's a book specifically with her name. Where she uses her sex appeal in order to convince the king.
Talking about Esther?
Esther. Uses her sex appeal in order to convince the king to do something else. Okay. We don't talk about those. We don't talk about the woman's sexuality in those situations. Mm-hmm. We don't talk about how Song of Solomon is a woman's expression of her sexual nature.
Right.
We don't talk about
that. Song of Solomon doesn't talk about...
Yeah, it's not about God. It's about sexual nature.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't think I've never heard the argument that it's about God.
No, a Hebrew teacher tried to stop that mentality. He tried to completely create this argument that this is...
I don't view God that way.
Well,
I hope...
there's an argument that it isn't meant to be that, but a lot of the ways we talk about God and worship can very much relate to sexuality. Very,
definitely. Yeah. Well,
right.
The whole thing is a picture. Right.
Which is why he used that, but he was trying to shift it away from this narrative. So there's very few situations of us talking about what is more, I'm just going to use the term feminist, even though I don't think it matches what the current model is. And it sees women as property. Mm-hmm. So that's the entire idea behind virginity. That's the entire idea behind marriage and sexuality that's presented in the Old Testament. I don't think that idea is healthy at all in our culture. And I think you'd agree to some extent. Which is why I don't like the idea of virginity. So you have to realize Paul's still keeping the same mentality about sexuality for most of his writings. Sometimes he actually opens up. But other times he's like, nope, condemn the gays, condemn this, condemn fornicator. So that's what I'm saying. Some of it's bullshit, but he has these moments where he goes back and forth, but there's some of it where he's still working through it, and he still has this old mentality in his head, and it's bullshit, and I hate it.
So I totally see.
Yeah, you see it, there. Right?
I see how you're getting there.
Yeah,
my view on that is, I think the sort of anti-women stuff that you're seeing is actually how Scripture has been twisted in modern times to mean something that it doesn't mean. For example, in Joshua Harris's church, Sovereign Grace, I know because I, knew people in that church. I think it's well, in I think Ephesians, Paul's talking about he's talking about the husband and wife relationship and marriage, and it would always say, he says, wives, submit to your husbands.
Right.
And then immediately after that, he says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So literally,
It's submission.
husbands, give up your lives for your wife. Like, die to yourself so that you may serve your wife. That's what.
Mm-hmm.
So when he's talking, this idea of like spiritual headship, the husband is the head of the wife as Christ is the head of the church.
Yeah.
As our spiritual head, what did Christ do? He died for us.
Right.
So
being
headship,
willing to put everything on the line.
Right. So headship and leadership.
Yeah.
In my mind, the way that I interpret Scripture, yes, it says the husband is the head of the wife. What does that mean? It means the husband must die for your wife.
Must serve the wife as well. Yes.
Well, like in a more dramatic way than the wife is serving.
Well, yes, but it's in a sense of like women submit and serve, men submit and serve, and this is the mentality you have behind it. It's
Right,
a
and
submission
so
side rather than, and it still presents men as the leaders, which some people would disagree.
But
with.
what I'm saying
No, I
is,
see what
but
you're
I think when
saying.
you're saying it presents men as the leaders, yes, I think that's true. But leadership, to me, the way that Paul is describing it, means nothing more than service and self-sacrifice.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean making rules for your wife to follow. It doesn't say, honey, go cook me a sandwich.
Right.
Like, do you cook a sandwich? You don't cook a sandwich.
I wasn't going to call it, but you did.
It's not a like the wife stays at home, and like cooks and cleans for me so that I can, go have the career I want to have. It's like, no, like you lay down your wife. You lay down. You do that too.
You lay down your wife.
You do lay down your wife, but no, you lay down your life for your wife, and I think that when we're talking about Paul's like so many people talk about Paul's teachings as being anti-feminist and
only some.
I think they've absolutely been twisted in the church to be anti-women or anti-feminist, and I think if we actually like take Scripture at face value, what it looks like to me is Christ and Paul are saying the same thing, which is men, lay down your lives for your spouses. So I don't I see how you're getting there to sort of his stuff being like.
Well, so it's a piece of it.
Okay.
So Paul is actually very feminist.
Yeah.
He supports the women pastors that are in the church at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
There's
definitely
in multiple areas. So for that you're like, oh, well that's much more progressive than a lot of our churches today, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
But the side of it that I'm saying was like the repressive side was this idea of virginity, this idea of sexuality, this idea of women as property. I don't think Paul necessarily held that last one, but I think the idea and approach to sexuality was still very consistent, which you can see in how he talks about sexuality, where he talks about fornicators being the same as these sexual deviants, being the same as people who slept with their mothers, being the same as people who were homosexual, which, going to steer a little bit away from the LGBT conversation right now, because that is
it's a whole nother can of worms.
That is a giant can of worms that we can talk about sometime.
Sure. You could have a whole podcast about that.
I almost did, actually, with a pastor friend of mine. It was interesting. Oh, it was great. I loved it. But just talking about how Paul sees those things.
Important conversation, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can tell that there's this thing holding him back from what's consistent with everything else he's talking about that sounds like freedom and love and health. And for me, that's what sounds like bullshit compared to everything else he does. Like, there's a lot of stuff Paul talks about that is specific to each church.
So you think the sexuality stuff is a contradiction of
absolutely.
the love and the freedom?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Totally. Yes. That's my point. Like that's my point. I don't think Paul in and of
So what specifically are you referring to with his teachings on sexuality?
Well, it's
like, are there specific verses
to be fair, it's partially what we've passed down through interpretation of it as well. So like the fornication thing is people who have sex before marriage. Mm-hmm. Adulterers, okay, yeah, don't cheat on your wives. That's obvious. Mm-hmm. Homosexuality, again, I think that was an understanding of the time and the culture and trying to be different from the Greeks, which were very open sexually. So that to me is that's a Jewish teaching.
Greeks were
they were very sexual. They were very sexual, which isn't a bad thing actually. Which is funny that we judge that.
No, there's a lot of raping children. That wasn't great.
Well, again, context. But yes, there was things that weren't okay going on. And I mean, I think that's the side of it that the Jewish tradition was trying to stay away from, and that I think Paul is keeping consistent with. But because of how broad that idea of keeping yourself away from being like these people developed, and I think, again, you still kind of see in Paul, and you see him work through as he works with Gentiles, like over just focusing so much on the Jewish side. I think you see that side of it, and you see him still struggling with how to approach sexuality. And I mean, everybody does. Like, we all naturally struggle with that approach because we have to understand and develop our sexual identity, I think. I think we're constantly exploring because it's a part of who we are. And I think it shifts and I think it changes. And I think it can be unhealthy and I think it can be very healthy. I know people who have been divorced and turn gay because they don't want to deal with the trauma or the comparison of them to the other person. Like you see, even outside of marriages, people do that. And if they're in like just committed relationships, where they break up and then they're like, oh nope, I'm going to the other team for a little while. I'm just cutting off. And I mean, it is what it is. It's people who are trying to process who they are. You have people who are bisexual who just they explore their sexual identity with whoever. I mean, yeah, cool, whatever. That's what you do. And I look at that in today's culture, and I'm like, man, we have so much hate from the church and so much uncomfortability with people who are different on those ends, and people who have sex before they're married. Like, somebody who has sex outside of marriage and gets pregnant can't be a worship leader? What? Or on the worship team? What? Like, the stuff like that I see as a very, very problematic for how we approach loving God and others in the church. And I say, no, stop this. If this is what's keeping us so hard, we need to throw it out. If this is the thing keeping us from loving people so well, and this is the thing that seems inconsistent with everything else Paul talks about, because it's connected to this negative idea of sexuality anyway, yeah, we need to copy and paste this and put it somewhere on the back burner. Like, we need to cut this out and realize where the context is for this. So for me, that's where that comes from. I was reading a book recently called Shameless. I can't remember the name of the author, but she's a pastor in Denver.
Okay.
And she goes through and talks about like these different people's sexual experience. Like, she has a church, I think it's called the Church for Saints and Sinners or something like that. So like, she has trans people, she has LGBT, she has people who've never been married in their life. She talks about her approach when her daughter starts talking about sexuality. And it just like goes through these, her processing with and like taking what these people say about their experience and being like, listen, this is what we're missing. This is the connection. This is the intimacy of community that we're missing because we're holding on to this. Because we're using this as an excuse not to accept somebody. And when she gets to the woman who was never married and never had sex before she was 30 or 40, because she finally just said, screw it, I'm going to have sex, and then felt awful and feels guilty and doesn't know how to process her sexuality because she never allowed herself to practice sexuality. She's like, no, I hated it. I feel guilty for myself for being a 30-something and having sex. And it's this weird idea, like, you see how this negative teaching not negative teaching. This teaching has a negative effect on our approach to sexuality, on our understanding of ourselves, because it essentially stunts our growth.
I mean, I would agree that when you lump, like, shame in with it is when it becomes super negative.
But that's what it is. Because what do you have if you lose your virginity?
Well, right, but I agree, like, the teaching on, like, the idea that... Well, I probably had this conversation with you before where, like, there's this idea that, like, you have something called asexual purity, like it's like a thing that you have. You have a sexual purity
It's
that
a card that you hand
that
over.
right that can be lost and is lost sort of the first time that you fornicate. Or it's been a struggle for a lot of women I know who are like sexually abused or whatever, and it's been a big like point of shame for a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
But people with any kind of past, like,
I think it's crazy when I talk to women who have been sexually assaulted and they say, well, that person took my virginity.
Right.
It's like, honey, no.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Like, no, that's not what that is.
Right.
You're not worthless because somebody took something from you.
But I would argue argue that Scripture doesn't teach that. Joshua Harris does. And
Ooh, okay.
And
now,
so
yeah, okay, go ahead, and then I have a point.
So I don't see that view in Scripture. I do see if you are a believer, then don't have sex outside of marriage.
Yeah.
But what I don't see is that if you did, there's all of this like shame and condemnation surrounding it.
Paul mentions that.
Where?
Paul is one of the people who says, if you see somebody who's sinning and you can't help them, kick them out of the church.
No. What a misinterpretation.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. You have him talk about sexuality, you have him talk about sin. And a lot of times, even in the Gospels, when sin is discussed, it's in a very shame manner. Well, not as much in the Gospels, but more in Paul. Because Paul...
what about when Jesus is saying, if any of you is without sin, let him be the first... Like, yeah. Jesus is...
He recognizes...
Advocating... Is like, so anti-shame in his approach to sin.
It depends on the Gospel, because they're all written with different intent.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would agree in John especially, he's very graceful. But I think you look at Paul... And you look at how he has these drastic ideas between the sinful, wretched side of who you are, and then this holy, perfect side of you in Christ, right? So, and he does.
Right, but that's like the whole point of his letters.
Well, yes, but he misses something when he does it. And obviously, this is thousands of years of translating and interpretation later.
Right.
So I'm not.
I feel like
I'm not personally criticizing Paul. I'm criticizing how we read it. So. When we
but that's what I'm saying. Though. It's like how people are reading the words that are there. I think is misinterpreted a lot.
But that's the thing. I don't think there's a misinterpretation here. I think it is. We see how he makes that drastic change. Now he says, "You are not in Christ if you are still doing these things." So then we are excluding people from our community because of that. Because logically, that is the conclusion you come to.
He doesn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't say you're not in Christ if you're still doing these things.
Yes, he does.
No, what he's saying is if you are in Christ, you will not continue to keep doing these things.
Okay, but what's the message there?
But he also says that what I want to do, I cannot do, and the things that I don't want to do, I keep on doing. Yeah. What a wretched man I am. So he's.
But do you know what comes out right after that?
What's that?
Thank God for giving me grace.
Yes.
Yes.
Right, but that's so.
But that's
like
that's the only place.
Yeah, who will save me from this body of death? Thanks be to God, who through Jesus Christ.
Okay, but that's in Romans. That is the end of his writing.
Right, but what I'm saying is he is so intentionally through.
I don't think it's as consistent through the rest of them. I don't think it's as consistent with having that follow up of, and there's grace covering me. And I don't think that is seen as well, because here's the thing. When he
Romans is specifically drawing attention to that, but I think that grace is all through his writings. I think it's a little bit.
I think it's learned. I think it's developed, definitely.
No, but he's writing to people who he knows have no concept of grace because they're Jews, and Jews don't have a concept of grace because they have to make sacrifices anytime they ejaculate in the middle of the night. Like, they have no concept of grace.
But even then, that's breaking them from the law and not from these basic principles and ideas. I don't think he has the same approach to fornicators as he would somebody who just feels like they're stuck by the law. I feel like the way Paul writes, he would see somebody who's a fornicator and say, listen, you're you're a danger to the church because you're unethical. Like, you're not matching what Jesus is.
So you're sensing a double standard there.
I'm sensing a double standard. I'm also sensing that, again, context, he was writing right around the time when Christians were being persecuted. They're starting to be persecuted. So for him, it also was important for Christians to be very consistent in their communities. Which is why he criticizes certain sexual things that are completely normal to criticize, like, children stop sleeping with your mothers. He wasn't addressing a very general audience. There were certain situations.
Wait, where does he say that?
I believe it's in Corinthians. He mentions, like, them sleeping with their mothers, because there is a specific situation,
like that is there.
but he generalizes it because he's just trying to give a declaration of what.
Well, he's talking to a specific church.
There were specific situations coming up, is my point, in that church.
Right.
Why he addressed
Well, in a lot of his letters for that.
Right. But that's the thing. He calls that out, and he puts that on the same level as other sexual misconduct. And that's the thing. It's still considered sexual misconduct.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, somebody having sex outside of marriage isn't sexual misconduct. Somebody having sex with somebody else while being married, that is sexual misconduct.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the community and the relationship that's built there.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, we see him use fornication as a negative term. We see him use that and not really provide a sense of grace afterwards. Because he follows it with so many other things. Those are like the sexual things, and I believe it's Romans.
He's talking about drunkenness and like a whole list of
it's
stuff.
even earlier. Hold on. So we're going to pause this real quick because I want to pull this up. So yeah, after doing some research, specifically in Romans, because that's the one we were talking about, it does, the passage I was reading from chapter 1 kind of makes it seem like a lot of sexual sin is just wrapped up. And kind of your point of saying, like, Paul does try to be very, very careful to approach love in those situations. Because the entire rest of the book is about freedom.
Right.
The entire rest is about finding Christ and finding that.
But you have to start with the bondage to get there.
You do, and he goes through different forms of it. He goes through the Jewish tradition and how, like, the laws and everything. But even then, it's still hinted that it's never specifically addressed. He just groups everything together and says, well, when you are in Christ, you will no longer do these things.
Mm-hmm.
Which, to me, I'm like, okay, if sex before marriage was actually considered a sin and not just a taking away of a woman's value, then I would agree. So again, taking the context back to the Old Testament, I look at that and I say, well, the reason that would have been considered a sin is because it was a sin against your fellow man to take his daughter's worth without then paying the price for her. It wasn't the same as a rape.
I think it was a cultural misinterpretation of,
not at all.
That command. But,
No, because that's very much, if a woman was deflowered before she was married, she was not marriageable. She was not marriage material. Culturally, yes. That's what I'm saying, though. It was a cultural sin, but he groups that together in with other things that were considered religious sins. Right. So that's what I'm saying. And even then, at that point, a lot of these writings were from priests who were trying to incorporate what they considered as cultural sins as religious sins so that it would be easier. So for me, that's the one piece. I don't think it is recording. It just looks weird. I do think that having sex before marriage can be unhealthy. Mm-hmm. I will completely acknowledge that. Having sex in marriage can sometimes be unhealthy. And I think generally my point is that as the church, we don't do a good job of describing either of those in a healthy way most of the time. Except, have sex with your spouse and only your spouse.
Sure.
Like, and that's the basics.
The conversation sort of stops there.
It does. And that's actually what I was saying with, you're like, the Word of God isn't Joshua Harris. And I was like, well, that's the tricky part. Because in the Bible there are back and forth conversations about what the ethical life should look like and what, our theology should reflect. And I think that's very much still part of our culture. I think that's still very much what we do. And there's an argument to be made that we are currently still part of the Word of God if we consider it the story of God. My way of simplifying it. In a way that...
Is that what you meant earlier about the current testament?
Yeah, the current testament. Not that literally his word is gospel, Joshua Harris, but that his interpretation is very much a part of our cultural idea of what Christianity is and how we see our theology. Because there's a lot of people who took that and thought it was amazing. And the funny thing is, looking at that book, because I read it, there were some good things in it.
Yep.
But the general premise and the reason he wrote it was terrible.
Yep.
So, like, even
and the
with
fact
that
he was 19 and
the fact that he was 19 didn't know anything. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it's like
I mean, I can say that because I'm 23 and I know everything. So
right, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm 25 and I know more than you. So
right.
there's that. Because we're all assholes. But no. So for me, I think religion, Christianity specifically, in the sense that we talk about how important the Bible is and we talk about how important these teachings are to us, we have to recognize there's a lot of commentary going on right now that either is or isn't listened to, and there has been for centuries. I mean, that was the Protestant Revolution. There was all these differences in theology and differences in ideas. The Church of God, for instance, started from a difference in ideas that was a little bit out of arrogance and a little bit out of just wanting to do something different and try something new, but it didn't necessarily have to. So that's the other thing is not only do we have to listen to commentary and try to find something different instead of just saying fuck you and leaving it. Let's say fuck you, let's fix this. And is it something that has to be fixed or is it something that we can work around? And I think that's where me at a practical theology level, I'm seeing the church, I'm seeing the Bible, I'm seeing God, I'm seeing other religions and saying where can we pull from this and find something that's true? Where's the truth in this reality that we're trying to put together? Because we're all trying to put together our reality.
What I will say is, even though I disagree with you on some of your interpretation,
yes,
I respect your mentality of instead of just leaving, like staying and like fighting it out and like seeking after truth, because I think that's something that, like, you're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and
absolutely.
I think that's very respectable and something I can admire about you, even as I disagree with you on some specifics. I think it's cool.
Well, I think it comes down to, if you're in a relationship with somebody or something, if it's not worth it, then you give up on it. But if it's something you care enough about, you're going to push for it. That's a marriage. That's a dating relationship. That's a sexual relationship. It's whatever. If there's going to be a connection there has to be a back and forth.
Right.
It can't be one way.
Right.
So, no. And that's kind of what it comes down to. And that's what it comes down to for a lot of things in life. Even just intellectual conversation or even just opinionated conversation. Since we're not professionals or we're not qualified in any realm of what we've been talking about.
Well, we are 23 and 25.
Yeah, that's true. So we have so much wisdom.
Yeah.
And we're millennials, so obviously we're the best generation.
Yeah.
Right.
I saw that on Wikipedia.
Yeah, exactly. No, but so yeah, any last comments, points of interest? We covered a lot.
We did cover
a lot of good stuff.
Covered a lot.
Yeah.
Last comments. Man, I don't know how to sum that up and tie it all together. But that's your job anyway, so I'll leave you to it. Appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, dude.
And
it's been good catching up. It's good seeing that you're still thinking through things. It's good to see that things are coming together for your band. I'm really excited for you. Like, genuinely, I think that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
I think the best way to sum this up is to say exactly what this podcast is meant to be. It's supposed to be a place where we learn, where we grow, and we look at each other, and that's the best way to do it. I think if we can't do that, we can't be the person that we want to be, or be a better version of ourselves. So, thank you so much for enjoying your cup of coffee with us, and catch you next time.